Welcome to Simply Sarah. I am Sarah Stockham, and I'm so glad that you are here for this truly unique conversation. There is a group of people who grew up in Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. And although we may have been there at different times, we may have grown up in different tribes with different language groups, different customs, different foods, there is something that binds us all together, this being at the equator or south of it for a lot of it, and seeing the Southern Cross stars in this constellation in the stars, this space of knowing that there is a huge group of people who are wanting life to be better and that we can truly make a difference in their life. We're going to have a conversation with somebody that is part of Education Congo, Jimmy Shafe. And as he shares, he may share some parts of his story or parts of his experiences that could be hard for some people to hear. And yet, I truly believe in Simply Sarah that when we share the different things that we have gone through or experiences that we've been involved in, that when we share not only that, but also the tools that help to get us through, that those are these beautiful gifts that we are giving to other people. And so, Jimmy, I'm so excited that you are here. I have been looking forward to this, and I got out my best malachite because malachite comes from Congo. I have never worn it on the show. It is here today because we are talking about Congo. How did you get to where you are today, friend?
Well, first off, thank you, Sarah, for having me on and for a chance to talk a little bit about Education Congo and
Yeah.
shared past experiences that, as you say, um, we were in different parts of the country, different time periods. I'm much older than you are, and yet Congo,
Yes,
when for whatever reason Congo gets in your blood, it simply stays there.
it does.
We all have an affinity for Congo. And of course, when Congo gets in your blood, it also stays there, probably because you've still got a little malaria
I was
crawling
just
around
thinking
in there.
that. Yes.
For years, after we would all come back, you couldn't give blood at the Red
Right.
Cross because they had no way of screening out malaria and things like that. But so it's a part of all of us that grew up there, and certainly a part of me. Um, you mentioned different languages. Um, so I guess I could start by saying Moyo Mama Sela. My
Moyo.
mother's name was also Sarah, and she was Mama Sela.
Yes.
And my name in Chaluba was Kalamba,
Mm,
Wa Mama Sela Kulubondai,
yeah.
which means I am Kalamba, son of Mother Sarah from
Yeah.
Lubondai.
Yes.
And that was the part of Congo where I grew up. Uh,
Mm,
and I say grew up. Um, that's a little bit misleading. I lived there during high school
mhm,
when my parents had been in Congo before I was ever born from 1939 to 42.
mm,
My father got very ill and they had to come back to the States. He was never allowed to go back out again because of health issues.
mhm.
And when I was 10, we had a tragedy in our family. And in the middle of the night, our home burned down, and my dad and my sister did not make it out of that fire.
Mhm.
And so it was after that, when I was actually 14, that my mother volunteered to go back to Congo, which is where her heart had been. And
Yes.
Congo was in her blood, so she wanted to
Yes.
go back. So, kicking and screaming as a 14-year-old who did not
Yes.
want to go, um, I was in high school in South Georgia, um, played basketball,
Mhm.
had a girlfriend with an officer in my class, did not want to leave Georgia.
Right.
But uh, mother prayed, I prayed, she had more clout. So there you go.
There you have it. Yes.
And how I got to where I am now, I suppose. I spent 39 years after graduating from high school before ever going back to Congo in 2006. And that first trip I really thought was going to be just sort of a trip home, one time to go home before I pass away.
Right.
it didn't work that way.
Yeah.
The conditions in Congo, the needs, the people,
Mhm.
the warmth, the love they have just overwhelmed me,
Yeah.
and the need just broke my heart. So I started getting heavily involved, and have since made 11 return trips,
Mm.
and and is just very much a part of who I am. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of how I got to where I am now.
That's so beautiful. And I so appreciate your mom making praying about it, but making the decision to go back and to teach. What did your father do when they had been there before you were born?
They were actually in the same village in Lubondai,
Mm.
which is where Central School for Missionaries Children was.
Yes.
And so my mother taught there.
Mhm.
And but when they went out the first time, my father was an evangelist, so he traveled around to the different villages nearby
Yes.
in that
Yes.
southern part of Kasai,
Yeah.
and preached and had learned a reasonable amount of Chaluba during that first term.
Sure.
And they had, of course, as most missionary families did serving in Congo, went to Belgium for a
Yes.
period of study ahead of time. And my
Yeah.
two older sisters were actually born in Congo, one
Ah,
in Lubondai, and then the one that passed away was born in Luebo.
wow. Amazing. I think that one of the things that is so memorable to me, speaking of loss, was the full village mourning for the person. And,
Yes.
here we might show up for a funeral, but there it was never a question of any of that, right? Everybody came, everybody showed up, and it was the village mourned together.
They
And
did mourn together, and it was a prolonged period of mourning. On that first return trip, I can remember being in Tshikaji in a little guest house there,
yes,
and someone had passed away right in the one of the homes very near us, and all night long
yes,
you heard the singing and
mhm,
the storytelling, and it was just right outside my window,
right.
and it very much was
Mhm.
a village celebration of life and a mourning
Yes,
of loss.
yes, yes. So, one of the things that you have done in your amazing adventure filled life, Jimmy, is that you have created a training that you taught and you are somebody who has trained so many different people through the years, people who have been in the service. Um, so teaching not only was in your mom's blood, but I think that there's a piece of that also in you as well. When you went back to Congo and saw the need that was there, what was the pressure point for you as an educator to know that you could make a difference?
One of the tremendous needs that I felt like I was seeing on that first trip was there was simply so much unemployment and people that needed training and skills as well as formal education.
Mhm.
And I knew that need existed. I had already, before that first trip, I had already been on the board of Education Congo for
Mhm.
3 years by then. I just had not made a trip. So it was all on a very intellectual sort of plane
Sure.
and observational as opposed to experiential.
Mhm.
And that first trip back just, it opened my eyes to things that it made me wonder why, as a teenager there, I had not seen.
Mm.
And I think as a teenager, as a high school boy, and I have to face facts. We were pretty overwhelmed with hormones and things like that, and chasing girls, and so that kind of preoccupied my thought process and sports and so on.
Sure.
But when I went back, seeing the fact that physicians were only making a few $100s a month serving in rural hospitals, And here were these people, highly educated, much more qualified than I am,
Yes.
and just so talented,
Mm-hmm.
and enduring so many things every day,
Yeah.
just to exist. I mean, Congo is very much still a subsistence economy in
Yes.
the vast majority of the country, and you're going to eat today what you pull out of the ground today,
Mm-hmm.
and there's hardly any electricity in rural areas. There's not refrigeration. There's not a gas stove to put your meal on. So meals are prepared over a three-stone fire, three big rocks and some a
Yeah.
pot sitting on top of them. And it's it kind of shocked my system.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back to the States, Sarah, with the feeling that if what I did was go back to doing my regular job and on weekends playing golf and doing church, that I was just turning my back on friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't do that. The first day back, as an anecdotal bit here, the first day I got back in the States from that first trip, I went in my front yard and I saw that I had Japanese beetles. And some of your listeners may know what those are, little black boogers that just love to eat on crepe myrtles and roses and things.
Yes.
And they had invaded my yard while I was gone, and there were thousands of them on the plants. And I thought, okay, I've got to go get to the store and get some spray and come back and treat this. And I thought about that a minute and realized, okay, this spray I'm going to need is probably 20, 25 bucks or something for the quantity I need. Then I looked at my yard and I thought, when we built this house, we spent several $1,000s extra on landscaping.
Yes.
And then I thought about those doctors
Yes.
making 400 bucks a month
Yes.
and realized I could have paid the salary of one of those doctors for 2.5 years for
Yes.
what I spent on my yard.
Mhm.
And I stood in my front yard and started crying.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of my friends from across the street happened to walk up at about that moment and said, "Hey, you're back from Congo. How did it go?" And I went, and he never asked me again about
Tears.
he was scared of the reaction and oh my God, the man's going to break down into a sob if I
Yes.
so he never asked again. But
Mm.
and I didn't push it on him either.
Right. Right. So you decide, you recognize that you can make a difference, and it's no longer processing and what theoretically could happen, but knowing boots on the ground what education can do, how um, a life can be changed and made different. And I think I'm the third generation. I'm part of the third generation that has been um, found donating to Education Congo to be so incredibly powerful on lots of different levels. But one of those levels is the brain drain that so frequently happens in third world countries or developing countries, right? You have these exceptionally bright people. They get a chance to go to college, primarily men, sometimes women. And then, college is usually out of the country or someplace else. And then they are offered jobs and take those jobs, sending money back home, but, living away from home in order to be able to do that. And one of the things that I find to be so radically different with Education Congo is that as you are training doctors, the whole idea is for them to stay in country, and that there are more women in the medical program than there are men right now. And again, what an incredible thing for people to be trained in their home country and be able to do their all of it there and then choose to stay and make a difference in their country. What a radical difference.
It is, and when we decided in 2006 to launch the medical school
Mhm.
for Congo Protestant University, which also is in French, it's Université Protestant au Congo.
Yes.
Thus, UPC is their actual logo. That just doesn't translate directly because of the sequencing of the words. But when we decided to launch the medical school in 2006, the idea was that by having rural teaching hospitals for the interns to go to in their final year,
Yes.
that we teased that hopefully we would send them to a rural teaching hospital. They would fall in love with the chief's daughter, and the chief would tell the doctor,
Right.
"You can't leave; you have to stay here." And
Yes.
and therefore, we would be sending doctors to rural Congo because approximately half, I think it's like 48% or something, of the doctors in Congo are in the capital city area of Kinshasa,
Yes.
whereas 80% of the population is out in rural Congo.
Correct.
So rural Congo is greatly underserved, while
Yes.
Kinshasa has a plethora of doctors.
Mhm.
And we had to change our thinking, though, because over time, the medical school, we realized, was, as you just said, attracting more women than
Mhm.
men.
Yes.
So now that the medical school has over 60% of the students are young ladies, we've had to alter our thinking and say, well, we hope that they go to a village and they fall in love with the chief's son. And, and
Yes.
so we had to reorient our thinking around a different gender profile, I suppose.
Absolutely. Well, Jimmy, we're going to take a quick break right here for all the good things that happen to support what we're doing. And when we come back, we're going to have more of a conversation about what really is Education Congo and what are they doing. Kinshasa is going to be the largest city, so I hear, so they predict, in all of Africa, and not very in a very close future. And so, how is this particular university truly changing lives in miraculous ways? Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham. Recently, we were doing some renovation work, and as we were doing all of the decorating, the color blue, specifically cobalt, kept showing up for me in different areas in different ways. And I thought, what I really want is a signature piece that is in cobalt. So I went to Glass Arts Collective and found this amazing piece. I absolutely love it. In fact, when it arrived, my husband wanted it. It is so beautiful. It's nice and heavy. It was perfectly packaged. So when it came, there was no concern at all about if it was going to show up all right or not. I love that it's handmade. I love that it's unique. And I invite you to go to the glassartscollective.com and go shopping. Pick something up for yourself, pick up some gifts for others. I know that you will enjoy how beautiful the work is. Considered how you Have you considered how you can today directly impact the economic and social future of a third world African nation? Education Congo is doing amazing work in empowering the youth of Congo by strengthening higher education and providing scholarships. They are truly shaping the economic and social future of the country. Established in the 1950s, Université Protestant Congo has 5 schools: law, theology, business, computer science, and most recently added a medical school to train doctors for the rural areas of Congo. With a student body of more than 8,000, over 55% are women. Numerous other universities are in formal collaboration with UPC, including Université Paris-Saclay, the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, the University of North Carolina, Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and Songsil University in Seoul, South Korea. This is where you can join. With your support, you can directly impact the lives of these students and contribute to a stronger and more stable Congo. The scholarships provided by Education Congo make a significant difference in enabling students to pursue higher education and become the next generation of leaders, as has already been experienced. This educational investment is a 3-generational personal favorite in my family because of its effectiveness in raising women and men leaders who are positively impacting the economic and social future of DRC. Let's come together and make a lasting impact. Here's the QR code and a link so together we can create a brighter future. Education Congo is a US-based 501c3 nonprofit devoted to a vision of a stronger and more stable Congo, accomplished through strengthening higher education. Truly a delight to be able to share with you about Education Congo. I share this also from the standpoint that other people in other areas are looking to make a difference in places that some people would say, oh, that's really too hard to do. And yet you guys are doing this. And so your board, from what I understand, is people around the world. How do you guys find the right time zone in order to have everybody work together and be able to have these conversations together?
Well, it's interesting you say that. When we have a committee meeting for development committee, very often Linda James is in Kinshasa. She works with the University of North Carolina and directs a program doing research in Congo. So she's back and forth a bit, but she may be there. We have another person in Saskatoon, in Canada.
Yes.
Um, Somebody else on the West Coast, one in Chicago, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, and uh, and we simply find a time that works. We usually have to have a hard stop around 5 p.m. because that's getting very late in Kinshasa. So
Yes.
we're at Eastern time. Linda starts saying, "I got to go to bed. I got to go to bed."
Yes.
That makes sense. When you mention our board, though, we've got Dr. Margaret Lowen is the current president of the board. Um, but Margaret grew up in Congo. Her father was one of the early leaders of the university when it was in Stanleyville, now Kisangani. Um, People may actually remember, some of your listeners, knowing the story of Dr. Paul Carlson being martyred in Congo, and it was during a takeover of Stanleyville. And Margaret's family was actually held hostage for 59 days, I think it was, before UN troops and mercenaries rescued them. And
Yes.
so Margaret is on our board. Her father, Mel, was one of the founders of this organization. He's now away. But others include professors at different universities here, University of Nebraska, um, and let me think where other universities, Kansas in a medical school, Mississippi in a medical school. Um, we've got a PhD in uh, chemist that works for Eastman Chemical, uh, business people. Phil Clewer, who is another Congo missionary kid, flies around the world with Orbis, which is a flying eye hospital to places like in Africa and the Philippines and all around the world. And they fly in and do eye surgeries and stay there for a couple of months and then
Yeah.
move on to
Move on.
another
Yes.
location. So the board is made up of people with different skill sets,
Good.
but we feel like we complement each other fairly well. My role is pretty much just run my mouth, and others have to do a lot of the thinking and planning.
What I love, Jimmy, about your ability to MC events, which is how I met you, was at a reunion, is that you truly are able to have different people from different experiences and different um, skills and share with them and just weave it together for this very seamless conversation for people to have. It truly is a gift that you have. And I'm so deeply grateful that you share it so freely and have such passions about things that make a difference. How much does it cost typically for somebody to be in school for a year at the UPC?
Great question. When you start looking at tuition figures, in the United States, average is probably, I don't know, in state at a public institution. On the low end would be about $15,000 a year, probably on the average. Higher than that in private schools, on up to what, 50, 60, $70,000.
Even more, yes.
Crazy. Congo, $800 to $1,200 a year. So the medical school tuition is a little higher than the others because it has a lot more lab expense and that kind of
Yes.
thing with it.
Yes.
Theology school at UPC would be on the lower end because they don't need the laboratory and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But $800 to $1,200 a year would be the tuition, and then the living expense is on their own. They would live on the city, based on their own ability to pay for rent and that kind of thing.
Sure. So does Education Congo do 100%? Do they do 25%? How are those decisions made?
Great question. By IRS standards and regulations, if you are a 501c3 in the United States, we cannot decide here who will get a scholarship there.
Yeah,
You're
right.
not allowed to do that. So all decisions on who receives a scholarship and exactly how much they receive and how it's dispersed, those decisions are made by the leadership and a scholarship committee at the universities there.
Beautiful.
And what we feel like is the best use of the money is the way they are doing it, and that is they base it on need. So one $1,200 scholarship may get divided 3 or 4 or 5 ways to help students round up and pay their tuition. Congo has an interesting education. Well, I don't know about Congo. The university has an interesting approach. A student can enroll with a small fee to start with. They can go through their classes. By the time exam time comes at the end of the year, they
Yes.
have to have paid all of their fees
To
in
take
order to take the exam.
Yes.
So the tuition is very incremental the way it comes in during the year. You may be 80% through the year and only half the students have fully paid.
Right.
But it's amazing how in that last few weeks,
Yes.
more find a way, and then the scholarship dollars are added in to help with that. And
Yeah.
we do approximately 100 scholarships each year that we are able to provide. It varies a little bit between 95 and 102, depending on which school students are in and
Sure.
how the money is used.
Beautiful. And UPC is one of the campuses. There's one in Kisangani, isn't there?
No, UPC or Congo Libre University started in Stanleyville, but that is what is now UPC in Kinshasa.
Got it.
The other university is University Evangelical Africa,
Yes.
which is in Bukavu. That's all the way over on the eastern side of the country, along the border with Uganda.
Yes.
And it is very much in the area of the country that for the last 20 plus years has been embroiled in war and conflict. And you were on the commercial break. You were showing your cobalt piece. Um,
Yes.
so, I mean, just as an interesting thought, these things,
Yes.
65 or 70% of the minerals that allow that to be recharged, that we
Yes.
all carry our phones around,
Mhm.
65 or 70% of those minerals come out of Congo.
Right.
And most of that is from Eastern Congo. And what that
Yes.
has led to is a situation where Congo has the greatest mineral wealth of
Mhm.
any nation on the planet,
Yes.
but that also has led to the greatest level of exploitation
Yes.
that any country experiences, because warlords come in, they take
Mhm.
over a village, they dominate the people,
Right.
um, do very unpleasant things sometimes to women and children, and 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 use that power.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, I might as well say it: rape as a tool of war
Yeah.
that causes villagers to succumb,
Mhm.
and then they will exploit those villagers, making the children do mining operations and that sort of thing. And so all the riches from that, well, not all, that's an exaggeration. Too much of that goes on, and it takes the wealth out of Congo and
Right.
exploits the people. And we feel like, I guess, Sarah, the point of Education Congo is to help, because we know
Yes.
with a higher level of education,
Mhm.
people are better able to find ways to resist exploitation
Yes.
and strengthen their economy of the country,
Mhm.
strengthen their families.
Yes.
We feel like uh, the whole point of Education Congo is education that builds a nation. You
Yes.
know, in the United States, people may give to their alma mater,
Mhm.
uh, and hey, that gets them better seats at the football game or basketball game. And there's nothing wrong with that. But giving to Education Congo
Mhm.
truly is helping to strengthen and build a nation. And I think there's a significant difference between that and a football game.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I love football.
yeah. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because both of my parents were educators. And when we were living in the place that I would call home, we were out in the village. That experience, we got to see the difference that education made. And uh, Lorena Kelly was somebody who was a single lady who had gone out, maybe even in the 20s, don't know, but she had determined that it was important not just to have a boys' school, but also a girls' school. And
Right.
so, um, on the in the village that I grew up, there was, the girls were going to school as well, and they were learning, and uh, just the joy of being able to learn to read and to have these interesting little figures on a page be able to share a story with you, right? And
Right.
that, and as is true in so many different countries around the world, that there is a national language. And because DRC was a Belgian colony, French is the national language. And then you
Right.
have over 200 tribal languages throughout the country that's the size of America east of the Mississippi. And the Congo River being the second only in volume of water to the Amazon. And so, so many different things taking place in this amazingly huge country, and being able to read, to being able to then learn to write, and uh, seeing that truly transform families. The power of education is something that I know that I've taken for granted. I've taken for granted how easy it is for me to get online and learn the next thing that I want to.
Sure.
Um, and that, friends of ours who are still out in the village where I grew up, their ability to communicate and email and that kind of thing is completely dependent on solar power. And if there's enough extra in order for them to be able to, get the laptop up and that kind of thing. And so, um, it truly is amazing how far technology has taken us and how well we can be connected as a result of that. But it doesn't touch every area of the world like we might think that it does. And for some place like Congo, that is in the center of Africa, that does have so much going on, Kinshasa, I think, will be the largest city in all of Africa and the entire continent. And so, how can we best impact then um, that particular area? Do you go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say, when you mentioned Kinshasa will be the largest city in Africa, and that is predicted. It is just booming.
Yes.
It is already the largest Francophile city in the world. It is larger than Paris, and that alone just kind of rattles your brain when you
Yeah.
think about it. Um, Kinshasa is. I like to use the analogy when I'm explaining Kinshasa to people that really don't know Africa at all. Is that if you go out in your yard and you see an ant bed, a large ant bed, and you took a stick and kind of stirred it around a little bit or with your shoe,
Mhm.
and I would venture to say that almost I know every boy alive has done that. I don't know about little girls. Um, but and immediately what happens is there's hundreds, if not thousands, of ants that are just teeming and moving in every direction. Kinshasa looks like that if you go up about 3,000 feet in the air and look down. It is just there's a movement
Mm.
to it that is unstoppable, with people
Yes.
walking and pushing carts and cars moving in and out of traffic.
Mm.
It's very congested, very very busy city. There's opportunity there. There are jobs there. There's
Yes.
also huge unemployment still there because there's not enough jobs there to accommodate all the people.
Mhm.
Just like rural America,
Right.
the way kids grow up in the country and
Mhm.
they decide, well, I'm going to move to the city. There's more opportunities. Well, that happens in Congo. People
Mhm.
want to go to Kinshasa. And that's when you mentioned the medical school earlier and us trying to get the doctors. We tease about wanting them to fall in love with the chief's son or daughter and that kind of thing.
Right.
But truly, that goal is to get more healthcare in rural Congo. And
Yes.
one of the first scholarship students that my wife and I were able to help, and not because we could designate, but
Right.
because we were notified this is who's getting your scholarship to a medical school. And in that case, we had designated we wanted to be Presbyterian and we wanted somebody from the Kasai province.
Sure.
Uh, and we hoped it would be a young lady.
Mm.
I've since learned that the more designations you put on something, the harder it is to award that scholarship.
Yeah.
So we try to discourage that now, but
Sure.
20 years ago, I didn't know any better.
Mm.
And but that one of those first young ladies that went through medical school, and it's an 8-year program, is
Yes.
now back in the Kasai in the village of Moma,
Mm.
serving in the hospital there and doing a fantastic job,
Mhm.
learning under the directions of Dr. Christoph that's there.
Mm.
So Mire Masinga has just become a dear friend.
Mm.
In fact, I had a message from her on Palm Sunday wishing me a
Beautiful.
happy Palm Sunday.
Yes.
It's great to create those relationships
Mhm.
with people there, and know that we've got people we can
Mhm.
trust. Too many organizations, when you donate to them, you never really know what's happening and whether the money is going into some giant black hole. Uh,
Right.
Not the case with Education Congo. We only have one person that is being paid on our staff, and she was only hired 2 weeks ago. We've operated since the late 90s with no paid employees
Mm.
and all volunteer. Board
Incredible.
members pay
Mhm.
our own expenses. If we
Sure.
make a trip to Congo, it's out of our pocket. The
Yes.
board is not involved in paying for any of that,
Yeah.
and we all put money where our mouth is, and we contribute.
That is so. I love the idea of leaders leading by example. How refreshing and beautiful and delightful that is. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you were to give advice to somebody, Jimmy, somebody who is interested in supporting work in a developing country, because of the amount of corruption that can happen, not just in a developing country, but in other countries as well. But what advice would you give to that person? Things to look for so that they know that their investment is going where they believed it was going.
Well, certainly they should look, do their research online, and go to the other websites. And the name is totally escaping me. It's not Gold Star, but whatever. The website is on ours. We
Yes.
can't think of the name, but they're screening agencies that give ratings, and those
Yes.
ratings are based on what percentage is going into overhead for the organization, what percentage of the donation is actually making it to the product or to the project in the field. And if I were looking, I would want to find something that is no more than 10 to 15% being held in overhead. I think when it starts to get above that, and this is purely my thinking, I don't know the research on it, um, but I would hope that it would be absolutely minimal. In our
Mm,
case, if someone makes a donation to Education Congo and designates it for a scholarship, all of it goes to that. We run
yes.
the organization, the postage, the printing of our documents, and this kind of thing. We run that with donations that are coming in that say for administration or use as best needed. But if
Yes.
someone says this is for scholarship, then 100% of it goes to the scholarship.
Yes.
Pure and simple, that's it. Um, we also have what we call named funds,
Yes.
which someone could honor. We have a name fund in honor of my parents,
Mhm.
uh, and that is, I think, most of our name funds are
Yes.
honoring a family member, and that name fund, once the contributions reach a total of $25,000 and it is matured or earned interest for a year, then
Yes.
it starts paying out. But
Mhm.
it only pays out based on the earnings.
Right.
Do not touch the corpus of that.
Exactly.
And so, in theory, uh, you know, nobody knows what the world's eventually going to do, but in theory, that
Yes.
means it's going to pay out in perpetuity,
Right.
and one would have the knowledge of knowing, wow, my legacy is that I am helping educate and build a nation.
Mhm.
What, for 50, 100 years after I'm gone? Long,
Right. Yeah.
we would certainly hope so.
Yes. Yes.
And we do have we've worked very hard at that, and over time we've got, I think it's between 40 and 50 of those named funds, and uh, and over 40 of them, I believe, are now paying out
Mhm.
scholarship funds.
That's beautiful. It's just dynamic, the way that all the different people on the board have figured out the best ways to move forward and to be able to keep the dialogues going and watching what other universities or educational systems or 501(c)(3)s are doing, and then being able to find the best, step forward for Education Congo. What do you see in the future, with Kinshasa growing as the capital city, with uh, UPC being there in Kinshasa, with having the other university at Bukavu? Are you sensing a third university someplace else? Are you sensing a second one in Kinshasa at some point? Is there space to grow in Kinshasa so that you're not concerned about that for the next 10 years or so? Or what's the future looking like in terms of best case scenarios?
Well, interesting question. And uh, during 2023, on one of the trips that a couple of board members made, they actually did go visit another university that is uh, in the western part of Congo along the Congo River, and in one of the other larger cities in Bandaka.
Mhm.
And so they checked out a university up there and just did a little fact finding, a little initial exploration. And the relationship we have in Bukavu with UEA uh,
Mhm.
is one that we only started in 2018, and that was after a bunch of investigation and being assured
Mhm.
that they were doing things right, and an exploratory trip, and felt very good about that relationship.
Mm.
With UPC, we've been involved since we were formed in the late 90s. So we started with UEA in 2018. And I would envision that in the next 5 to 7 years or so, we probably will try to have our footprint in one more university.
Mhm.
Uh, Beyond that, I'm not sure. That, of course, would be up to a future board to
Of
decide.
course.
Uh,
Yes.
a, a number of us are older. And as I made a list earlier thinking about names, I realized I was writing the word retired after several names. So we are kind of always on the lookout for people that have a heart for Congo. Whether they have a real direct connection or grew up there or not is not
Right.
important. What we need is skill sets
Yes.
and people who have a heart for helping and can see the importance of helping, in particular, a country like Congo.
Yes.
I mentioned the phone.
Mhm.
You mentioned the river.
Right.
Congo has the second largest rainforest in the planet, second to
Yes.
the Amazon.
Yes.
And everybody I've ever met truly enjoys breathing.
Yes.
And we need that rainforest
We
as a
do.
planet. It's
Yes.
got the world's largest, like 500 million acres of peat.
Yeah.
And sometimes leaders get greedy. And there
Yeah.
was a move about a year ago trying to lease out those peat lands for oil fields.
Yeah.
And that would be tragic for the world.
Yeah.
We
Long
need those peat lands and we need the forest
term. Mhm.
because we need the air to breathe.
Yes.
And those forests are the lungs
They
for the
are.
planet,
Yes.
and we need them. We need them. So
Yes.
people that have a vision to recognize
Mm.
those kinds of needs that say, you know what, I'd like to explore getting involved with that. We would entertain and take a close look at somebody, and certainly having a variety of age groups
Yes.
and skill sets is
Yes.
very important and
Yes.
important.
Yes. And I think it's true for any board. So
Yes.
often we think that if I just get somebody who's kind of like me, we won't have to have a lot of discussion about things because we'll just make decisions and move forward. And there is a place, I understand that thinking, but the diversity of thought, the diversity of conversation is where we start to unearth other kinds of conversations and pivot in ways that maybe if all of us were the same, we wouldn't necessarily go that direction. And those kinds of conversations, I think, are really, really important for us to be open to and for us to leave the space for those to allow, for those to show up. And if somebody is a second language learner and they are looking for the word to be able to say, to be present and not have to fix the sentence for them, um, uh, my French is not what it used to be, and it never was great. But when other people would finish my sentences, I never had to do the work, right? And so I think that allowing gifting people that space. Um, so as you look at that future, not only of the board, but also and particularly of what's happening potentially with the universities that are there, how are you feeling about the professors who are there, the people who are at the top, who are teaching, who are passing the baton of information?
Um, we have truly learned to respect the commitment of the professors and leaders of the university. Um, Dr. Ngoy Daniel, that passed away this past year, he was the president, and he had been the president since the early 90s, I think 92 or 93, maybe.
Yes.
And so he served about 30 years. And he took the university from maybe 900 or 1,000 students to up over 8,000,
Yes.
and really did a very, very solid job with the university. And and he was also a graduate of UPC. And he had come from a little tiny village up in Equateur province, in this village of Lotumbe.
Mm.
Uh, and to get to that village now, I mean, even now in 2024,
Yes.
Sarah, if you went there tomorrow, you're going to take a 12-hour ride in
Mhm.
a dugout with an outboard motor attached to this long, tree
Uh-huh.
dugout
Yeah.
in the river to get there, because that's it. There are no roads to get you there.
Wow.
Um, and he came from that village, went to UPC, was trained as in theology, became a pastor, later came back to the university and taught, and then worked his way up and was president. Um,
Yes.
the current president, Dr. Nkima, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, Nkima, um, was recently president or rector of a much smaller Baptist university in rural Congo, in Kikongo. And he came on board last September.
Beautiful.
And, the Dean of Academic Affairs, Vice President of Academic
Mhm.
Affairs, Dr. Sam Mampunza. Sam has become, I feel like, one of my closest friends over the
Mm.
last 20 years, and just an absolute delight of a man uh, to visit with and to have visit in our home. And
Mhm.
so I think the university is in good hands. Uh,
Beautiful.
professors, we have very few full-time professors. In
Mhm.
Congo, it's pretty routine for a professor to have classes in more than one university. So some of our professors also teach at the state-run
Yes.
University of Kinshasa,
Yes.
and that's pretty routine.
Mhm.
So imagine that sometimes they teach a class in the morning for us and in the afternoon at Unikin, and all of those ants that I described moving
Yes. All the
around,
movement.
they
Yes.
have to move around through that to get
Yes.
to that other class. So, but their
Yes.
commitment levels
Mm.
are just incredible. They're
Wow.
just incredible.
So, Jimmy, are there things that you want to reiterate as we are coming to the end of our time together today, friend?
Well, Sarah, just kind of to recap what you described of us. We've got the two universities,
Yes.
one in the west, capital city,
Mhm.
um, much more developed city, much more chaotic city, one
Yeah.
in the east in a much more serene setting, unless there's a war going on, which
Unless.
has been constant. And when I refer to that,
Yeah.
that has over the last 20 years claimed somewhere around 6 million lives, which is
Correct.
just, it's almost unfathomable.
Staggering. Yes.
And we've got key people that are running the organization. For goodness sakes, one of the medical school professors in Bukavu is Dr. Denis Mukwege.
Mhm.
Dennis won the 2018 Nobel Peace Prize. He was a
Yes, he did.
co-winner of that.
Yes, he did.
So
Yes.
these are not fly-by-night schools. They're not diploma mills.
Yeah,
They're the real thing,
they
and
are.
they're making a difference in the country. And people can join in that
Mhm.
and say, you know what, I want to help a student go to school, and
Yes.
and here's my $800 or my $1,000,
Yes.
and I'm going to help a student go to school. In fact, when you think about a named fund at $25,000, that can seem really high. On the other hand, somebody could say, you know what, I want to educate a doctor.
Yes.
I will accept
Mhm.
$1,000 a year for 8 years and
Yes.
sign me up. I
Yes.
want to I want to send a doctor somewhere in Congo, and those are the kinds of things that, oh my goodness,
Yes.
it would be wonderful, you know.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the only other thing that I think I could say is Nakatondo Yomengi. Thank you, Sarah.
Lusaka, Lusaka Hayama. Yes. So we grew up in different tribes. It's all good.
Absolutely. Oh, goodness gracious. This was fun. Thank
This
you for
was fun.
having me, and thank you for your interest in Education Congo and your heart for Congo.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Well, in this space of saying thank you so much for being here, thank you for letting us share something that's been deep on our heart. And inside of this, we're still these beautiful gifts of tools, of energetic, of how to move forward, of finding people who don't necessarily look like you or speak your same language, but still have this incredible passion for changing the future, not just tomorrow, but truly decades, maybe even centuries from now. I am so grateful that you're on this journey with me. Have an amazing rest of your day. Until next time.